The Syrian government has raised the stakes in the 16-month-long conflict that's left the country battered, bruised and isolated. Representatives of President Bashar al-Assad's administration admitted for the first time their military has chemical and biological weapons. And they went further, saying the armed forces will use them if foreign troops intervene in the conflict.
It's the first time the Syrian regime admitted it has chemical and biological weapons. The foreign ministry tried to quell fears that it would use them against rebels in the 16-month-old uprising, but that it could use them against foreign intervention.
These weapons are meant to be used only and strictly in the event of external aggression against the Syrian Arab Republic.
A statement that the government could be making in hopes of avoiding foreign intervention. This comes as the European Union is increasing sanctions on the Syrian regime. EU ministers agree to tighten up an arms embargo, freeze assets and add dozens of names to a blacklist of people and companies thought to be involved in the repression. The EU is also more than tripling its emergency and humanitarian aid to 63 million euros.
We're sending the humanitarian aid. We're working with the countries, particularly Turkey and Jordan, but now increasingly Lebanon and Iraq, who have found many thousands of people fleeing across the border, to offer them as much support as possible.
Warnings from the US and Israel and concern from the United Nations have followed Syria's threat to use its chemical and biological weapons. Bashar al-Assad's government says it will only turn to its stockpiles if faced with foreign intervention. His US counterpart cautioned against a tragic mistake.
Today we're also working for a transition so the Syrian people can have a better future, free of the Assad regime. And given the regime's stockpiles of chemical weapons, we will continue to make it clear to Assad and those around him that the world is watching and that they will be held accountable by the international community and the United States should they make the tragic mistake of using those weapons.
UN Chief Ban Ki-moon has voiced concern about the risk of Syria using chemical weapons. Damascus has acknowledged for the first time that it has chemical and biological stockpiles, saying it could use them if foreign countries intervene.
It would be reprehensible if anybody in Syria is contemplating use of such weapons of mass destruction like chemical weapons. I sincerely hope that the international community keep an eye on this so that there will be no such things happen.
Since the 1980s, it's just one of 6 countries around the world that hasn't signed the Chemical Weapons Convention, which outlaws production, storage and use of such weapons. It's thought to have one of the most sophisticated programs in the world, and there's online data suggesting that it might have chemical plants and storage depots in Al-Safira, Hama, Homs, Palmyra and Latakia. Weapons thought to include nerve gases and blistering agents, and it's also thought Syria might be developing biological weapons at Suran, this according to globalsecurity.org, which says US officials have identified a facility there.
Classified talks between the US, Jordan, Turkey, the UK and France are heating up over whether Syria would resort to using chemical weapons or if those weapons could fall into terrorist hands.
I think they know that there'll be an immediate knee-jerk reaction from all of us in the neighborhood, including the international community, if the Syrian regime would make the mistake of using those chemical weapons.
More al-Qaeda fighters, media reports that chemical weapons are being moved around. Israel being very concerned about some of those chemical weapons reaching Hezbollah.
Assad is out.
In an exclusive interview, Israeli President Shimon Peres tells CNN his country is preparing contingency plans to attack Syria's chemical weapons arsenal if Israel is directly threatened.
You don't have the right to use them. And what do you do when somebody violates the law? You fight against it. You stop them. And the Syrians must be aware that what they do is against international law and endangering here our lives. So we shall not remain indifferent and tell them do what you want.